The Verbiest car was the world's first self-propelled vehicle. And yes, it was not much more than a toy, but it certainly proved the concept that sooner or later you could replace the horse. Almost a century earlier, Leonardo da Vinci may have designed and even built the first programmable robot on wheels. But that obviously was not a vehicle. The first ever car, however, had an Oriental connection, and it was all the brainchild of one man who lived in the 1600s. Father Ferdinand Verbiest was a Flemish missionary who traveled all the way to China and became a head honcho among the imperial astronomers. He published more than 30 books and could speak about a zillion languages. In 1658, he left with 30 others of his fellow Jesuit ministers. And if you think Marco Polo had a harrowing ordeal in the Far East, you should really check out this guy's story. By the time they all finally made it to China, only 10 of them were still alive, and that was just the start of their miseries. Not everyone in China was keen on having these Christian missionaries around. Still, the surviving Jesuits gave thanks to God for allowing them to make it to the end of their journey. But their luck took a turn for the worst when the emperor in power at that point suddenly croaked. His successor was his 7-year-old son, who obviously couldn't rule on his own, so a regent called all the shots for him. And unlike the departed emperor, he was no fan of these Christian foreigners. So this regent challenged Father von Bell, the Jesuit director of the observatory in Beijing, to an astronomy competition. I have no doubt that the Christians tried their hardest, but for whatever reason, they still lost the competition, most likely because it was rigged, and things started to get a little hairy for the Christians. They were rounded up and thrown into an appallingly filthy prison. They were also tied to pegs so that they couldn't sit up or stand up, not even to take a... And after 2 whole months, a sentence of strangulation was finally passed down to them. But then the Chinese thought that this was too warm and fuzzy for how appallingly evil the Christians are. So they decided to chop up the Jesuits into little bits while still alive, instead of strangling them. But the Jesuits must have prayed like hell, because an earthquake hit out of nowhere and destroyed the part of the dungeon where their execution was scheduled to take place. And furthermore, an incredible meteorite streaked across the sky. And to top it all off, part of the imperial palace where the condemnation was pronounced burned to the ground. Take that, you Chinese infidels! So the Chinese released them. But they still insisted that these crazy Jesuits stand trial, after which all of them, except Verbiest and Father von Bell, were sentenced to exile to the city of Canton. Within a year, von Bell had died, thanks to all he had gone through, leaving Verbiest in charge. And after a real astronomy competition left him on top, he would go on to modernize astronomy in China, introducing the sun-centered solar system and the telescope. But what of the world's first automobile? Did he ever actually build the thing? Well, considering he had access to Chinese metal workers, some of the best and finest in the entire world, yeah, there's a good possibility he actually did construct the very first automobile.